It's the Oilers and the Jets tonight. So let's bring in Dustin Nielsen from TSN Radio in Edmonton. How are you, Dusty? Good to see you.
Good, buddy. I'm intrigued about this picture now. I want to see this picture. What's this picture about?
I know, right? We asked how folks are celebrating game day, and John's in Winnipeg. He said he's got the blue hair going on. But speaking of game day and like traditional things, what's the situation in Edmonton? Because when I was looking last night, there was the start of the whiteout. Wasn't it snowing in Edmonton?
Yeah, there's snow on the ground today, which is, usually it's coming up May long. You're going to get snow in Edmonton, and then, they do. And then we also have a playoff game to finally get to as well. So, yeah, a little bit. Somebody just tweeted me a picture of a snowman that they built this morning with an Oilers scarf around it. So it's like we got the regular playoff hockey here in April, man. It's amazing.
That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. But how much anticipation has there been? I mean, since, Friday or Saturday, the playoffs got started, and you got to go day after day waiting to get going here in the North.
Yeah, you know what? It's with the way these games have gone, I think people have been even getting more excited. I mean, a few of these series so far, most of them have been absolutely incredible hockey. Some of it very physical. I mean, it's been great. And the weird thing about this one is that we've basically known it was going to be Oilers and Jets for like 2 months. I mean, since Montreal had their red hot start, then completely fell off, and Toronto kind of separated from the pack, we've been projecting Oilers Jets since like early March. So we've just been waiting for this game one now for like 90 days. And now it's finally here. The two teams are in a little bit of a different spot. But yeah, the vibe this morning, the buzz on my show, so I go on the air at 6 o'clock, Dupes, and we had a text at 2:30 in the morning. We had a text at like 3:15 in the morning. We had 5 or 6 texts in the 4 o'clock hour, and then we had like 30 texts in the 5 o'clock hour. People were texting the show at 2:30 in the morning because they couldn't sleep because of the game tonight.
That's unbelievable, but that also infuriates me a little bit, because I watch games in Carolina and they put 12,000 people in there. Imagine what they'd be doing in Edmonton if they could actually go to the building for the game tonight.
It would be something else. And after that news that popped up in Montreal about possibly having 2,500 in there for Game 6, if it gets to that, I know there's been people, who've been texting and being like, "Dusty, you hearing anything here in Edmonton?" And I know the Oilers, they've been working very close with, Alberta Health since essentially having the bubble here, a year ago now. So they've got some good contacts there. I mean, if any market in the West was going to be able to pull this off, it'd probably be the one with the Oilers in a relationship with Alberta right now. But, the province just isn't in a great spot. Maybe, late second round, early third round. I don't know. I know their conversations have been had, but let's see how it plays out if Montreal does have it happen. And honestly, a lot of it just gets me fired up for a CFL season, because if you can get people indoors in 2,500, then we're certainly going to have people outdoors, which will be great.
Yeah, I agree. And we had Alan May on from NBC in Washington, head of the Caps and Bruins, and he's not traveling to Boston. They can't even travel outside of their city. So he was doing the games in the press box in the arena in Washington, but they're doing them off a monitor for the games in Boston. And we talked about the Final Four, and even if you can get fans in Edmonton and Montreal and Toronto and Winnipeg, I don't know if we're going to be crossing the border back and forth when we get to the Final Four. Have you heard anything? What would be an ideal situation?
Seems highly unlikely. It seems highly unlikely. I think the likely situation would be whichever team comes out of the North has to go full Toronto Raptors here and call the United States home for the rest of the run. But because you're right. I mean, let's say Montreal goes on a run somehow and comes out of the North, and they've had 2,500 fans in their building for, a series and a half. I don't think all of a sudden that just means that the border is going to miraculously be open here outside of the 7-day quarantine that you needed in the first place. I mean, they might be holding out hope, because the deadline had just passed again, right? They extended it another month. So, maybe there's an outside shot, but I'd be pretty surprised at this point. I think we'd probably be foolish to plan for that. And it's weird because you haven't really seen even any of the insiders sort of lay out what the plan will be. So maybe they're waiting until the last second to actually figure out what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so. But if you go down to the States, and Alan suggested that, what market would be your dream market for the Edmonton Oilers to go and play in? Would it be Phoenix, because we assume there's a lot of Canadians there? He suggested Dallas. Somebody said Buffalo.
Yeah, man, because you would be allowed to have fans in the building, right? So, and people would probably deal with a 2-week quarantine coming home. They'd probably go down and try to check out that
That's
game.
what he said. Would you take the 2-week quarantine to go down there for 10 days to watch the series?
Some people might. They'd be so desperate for hockey. It'd probably have to say, probably down in Arizona. So if you're gonna skip out on work and go down and then have to take 2 weeks off when you come back, you might as well stay down there and golf a little bit while you get to check out the game. So yeah, that might. I wonder what they would do though. Like, I don't know. It's weird that there hasn't been any sort of details leaked about possible plans here.
Alan, our intern on Facebook, says, "My lord, Nielsen looks like Nick Nurse. He can pass off as a twin." Have you got that before?
No, I've never got that before, but he's an excellent basketball coach, and I'm a big fan of the association. So I'll definitely take that. I'm not as musically talented as Nick Nurse, but I'll take the comparison. I think he's honestly a good-looking man. So this is a great compliment here this morning.
How about that?
How about that? We're on to something. I love it. So to the game tonight, Jets and Oilers, and I mean the season series. What 7-2-0 for the Oilers in the season series? It wasn't close. Hellebuck wasn't good. Mike Smith was, of course. You know, McDavid 22 points in the season series, scored in every game. How does Edmonton not win this series?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to victory here, I think, for Winnipeg. I do think the Oilers will win it. I think the weird thing for me right now is that, and I've said this a couple of times on other, on my show and stuff, I feel like both teams are being a little bit disrespected here. Like Winnipeg a month ago, before they went into their slide, we're fighting with Toronto for top spot. They had that series coming up. If they would have had success in it, they could have taken over top spot for a little bit. And they've been injured as of late, and looks like they're still banged up heading into tonight. But they're still a good hockey team. I know they've really struggled down the stretch here, but they're still a good hockey team. So I think us here in Edmonton, anybody who's picking it to be 4 or 5, I think we need to give the Jets a little bit more respect. And then anybody outside of the Edmonton market, everybody seems to think Toronto's this heavy favorite to come out of the North, and they have the same amount of wins in regular. I think the same amount of wins or one more win than the Oilers this season. And going into the final weekend, the Oilers have more regulation wins than the Toronto Maple Leafs. So Toronto just managed to get more loser points along the way to have that little bit of separation up at the top. So as far as the overall bigger picture for these two teams, I think we might be selling both of them a little short. But as for how the Winnipeg Jets find a route to success, I mean, usually it's the same recipe for success for the Winnipeg Jets, and it's Connor Hellebuck to stand on his head because they hemorrhage scoring chances against. And Hellebuck looked very average during the season series here, and that's why McDavid had at least 2 points in every single game, set an NHL record. So they don't seem to have a team in front of him that will be able to contain Connor McDavid. So I think it might have to be a combination of Hellebuck being brilliant, Mike Smith being average to below average, because I don't know how Winnipeg approaches this. Like, the last thing you want to do is get into a run and gun affair with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, even though, when healthy, you've got a pretty good top 9 up front, but I don't think your D-man can hold up their end of the bargain if that's how you want to play it. And at the same time, I mean, is Winnipeg a team that's built to win 2-1 hockey games? I really don't think they are in your typical playoff lockdown mode. So I think it's going to have to be Connor Hellebuck. Look, he's a goalie who's capable of doing it. He won the Vezina last year. He's got a couple of shutouts here in the last few weeks. He's a goalie that's capable of standing on his head, but he just hasn't been able to do that against the Oilers this year.
Yeah, you're right. He's going to have to do that. What's interesting, the lines that were on the ice yesterday for the Oilers, McDavid and Draisaitl, not together. I think you're a fan of playing them together. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think Dave Tippett's done a pretty good job this year of going back and forth from it. And he basically has said multiple times it's a situational thing. And there were a few times there near the end of the season, I think he left them together just so they could hammer that 100-point mark for Connor McDavid, and it definitely worked out. But, I think long-term, this is probably the way that you're going to have to go. And if he talks about it from a situational perspective, well, what's the situation with the Winnipeg Jets? The situation with the Winnipeg Jets is if Mark Scheifele tries to shut down Connor McDavid the entire year, McDavid torch Scheifele. And then you've got Stastny. If they decide to go Stastny against Leon Draisaitl, Draisaitl should have a significant advantage there. If you look at the numbers, Connor McDavid, when they were apart this year, he scored a ton against Winnipeg. When they were together, they scored at even a higher rate. I think they played about 25% of their time together against Winnipeg this year, scored 8 goals. And McDavid spent 75% of his time by himself against Winnipeg, scored 10 goals. So, I mean, they just find a way to provide offense against the Winnipeg Jets. So, it's always something Tippett can go to. I don't know if he panics early in the series and decides to lock it in. We have seen him go to it mid to late game if they're looking for offense, and it usually works, whether it's Jesse Puljujarvi or Kyler Yamamoto on the right side with those two guys. So I like the way that they're starting it, and we'll see how it plays out because he's moved back and forth from it quite a bit this year.
Teams that aren't in the playoffs, I mean, their fan bases they're hurting, Dusty. Jeff's in Calgary, and he says, I hope both the Oilers and the Jets lose this series. Meanwhile,
hey,
he's going to watch the game this afternoon, right? He'll watch the game this afternoon, and that's how that will go.
That is cruel punishment, though, to watch those teams play that out. That's tough.
It really is. It really is. But I look at it, right, 3 timeouts per period, and they're what, 2.5 minutes each, TV timeouts per period. So with the extra rest, I mean, and you split these guys up, and if you need to, I mean, you can start pushing 25, 30 minutes if McDavid needs to be on the ice. That's McDavid or Draisaitl every single second of the hockey game. I mean, it becomes awful tough.
You're right, man. You could, if you want to keep them separated and play them both for 25 minutes, I mean, they could be out there a ton, especially if they're going to get a lot of that power play time. So that's something that they do have going for them. Like, probably for 75% of the game, they'll have the best forward on the ice. And that's why people say, well, you know, the Oilers only go as far as that time when they're not on the ice. But with the way McDavid and Draisaitl have been this year, I mean, buddy, they've been automatic. Connor McDavid's had one of the one of the greatest offensive seasons in the history of the game. And one of the teams he's victimized the most is the one that they're going to be playing here in the first round of the playoffs. So it's a luxury to have for Dave Tippett. There's no doubt about it. And you know what? Like, I know those guys played a lot during the regular season, but let's be honest, we're 56 games in. You know, this is not after an 82-game grind. You got to go play up to 100 games to take a run at the Stanley Cup. 56 games. They've had 2 stretches of a week off in the middle of this weird season, too. So I would think of the teams in the North, you know, the Oilers might be one of the most well-rested clubs.
One more before we let you go, because if for some reason Winnipeg can shut down those two, now I think you just hope to contain them. I mean, if they each score a goal a game, you got a chance, right? If you can limit them to providing 2 goals. But looks like Cassian's in, no Tyler Ennis. What does the bottom 6, the depth look like?
Yeah, Cassian hasn't played in a while. He's been out. He's been injured. I didn't think they were even getting back to late first round, but this does make sense because the first round's starting so late that it kind of hits that timeline that they were looking at. So they put him with Ryan McLeod and James Neal, and then they got Jujhar Khaira with Alex Chiasson and Josh Archibald. And people seem pretty excited about McLeod, Cassian, and Neal. I mean, we'll see what they can do. As long as these 2 lines don't come out on the negative end of a hockey game, the Oilers are usually pretty good. I mean, McDavid and Draisaitl at even strength, those lines are each going to probably, you know, create a goal or at least a bunch of chances. And if they get a power play, they got the best power play in the league with those 2 guys. So, you know, an opportunity to take advantage of it there. Cassian's the interesting one, though. I mean, back in 2017, when they went on a mini run, they went 2 rounds. He was great. I mean, he was very physical. You see what's happened so far with some of the physical play in the postseason. He hasn't had a good season, but I wonder if, you know, at some time off here, back healthy, if he's able to provide a little bit of jump in their bottom 6. And I don't think this series is going to be overly physical like some of the ones that we've seen so far. Maybe there's a little bit of that in game 1, but in the end, these are 2 teams that, you know, feast on skill. And I think that's what we'll probably see.
No, that's great. One of the things I love, Canadian sports fans, I mean, they're hungry, and I think they're underserved. So we see a lot of fans that watch your show, watch our show, and our show watch Hustler Show, and Hustler Show watch your show, and you know, we're all kind of consuming together. So they want to know. I think it was John in Winnipeg wants to know what's your favorite or what's your most valuable card that you pulled, because they're following along with the crack pack and, you know, your card collection.
And I've got a card that I pulled. I've got a lot of cards that I bought along the way. They're all up on the wall over here, but best one I've pulled so far, probably, like, since I started doing the cracking of packs online with Break Kings that I teamed up with, I pulled a Connor McDavid auto and a Wayne Gretzky auto, which is crazy because I've only done 6 breaks and I've got a Gretzky auto. Very first break I ever did, the last card I opened was a Wayne Gretzky autograph. And I go upstairs and I'm shaking and my wife's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, I just pulled this Wayne Gretzky card. And she goes, is it for you? I said, no, it's for somebody else who was in the break, but it's such a rush. So yeah, in the last month, I've pulled Gretzky and McDavid autos. So yeah, those 2 would have to be right up there.
Sports cards or cryptocurrency? What would be?
Well, I don't understand cryptocurrency, so I'm investing everything I have in sports cards moving forward. All the big rookies, and hopefully, even if there's a downtime, hopefully, like in 30 years, it goes back up, and my kids can actually attend post-secondary school.
I love it. I love it. We didn't touch football because it's Oiler game day. We'll do that another time. Dusty, enjoy it.
Man, God, I hope we get a little bit of that, buddy.
I do too. I really, really do. Enjoy game day, pal. Enjoy the game tonight.
Yeah, good chatting with you, man.
Yeah, Dustin Nielsen from TSN Radio in Edmonton joining us on the video chat. Yeah, that's exciting. They get game day. It's like their birthday, right? I mean, I'm excited for them. So, do we got to do the photo after the break? Okay. I think, if Dusty's still logged in, he probably wants to see this from John Ohm. But he says, great job, Dusty. They love him right now. We've got the photo. All right. There he is. Oh, he's got the blue mohawk on. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
He's your stylist.
John is ready for game day. Jets and Oilers.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.